experience is the experiment.
Today's guest is a world-renowned producer. He has worked with artists like Demi Lovato, Alyssa Cara, Jason Derulo, PM Bada, Aloe Black, and many, many more. Please welcome today's guest, my friend, Midi Jones. What's going on, Midi Jones?
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
Doing good. How you doing today?
I'm doing so good. I'm so glad we got you on.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad I got to be here.
It's funny when I finally get friends on because it's so different than a podcast with somebody I don't know.
Sure.
Because there's just this automatic, we're already friends.
Yeah, totally.
So we don't have to, the acquaintance part is already done.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't think it gets better than that.
I agree. What's your ratio of people that you're like, we know each other versus like, hey, come on the pod?
I don't know. I'd say probably 60% I don't know.
Cool.
And the rest I do know, whatever that math is.
Cool.
40%.
Yeah.
So real fast, I gave a little explanation, but
Yeah.
kind of tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Sure. I am Midi Jones. I'm a music producer, engineer, instrumentalist, writer out of North Hollywood, California, via Austria. Yeah.
So were you born in Austria?
I was born in San Bernardino.
San Bernardino.
My dad's from Alabama and South Central, basically. My family kind of lives now in like the Inland Empire, like on my dad's side, like his mom and like some of my uncles and an auntie and stuff. But most of my family lives out in Austria. I'm first generation American on my mom's side.
And you've told me that the town that you come from is like
Tiny
and in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. It's like 350, 400 people.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So how long were you there for?
I was there for like a while, probably from the ages of like 6 to 12. And then I moved from there to Spain to Brazil to the States. And I've been here since then.
What do your parents do?
So my mom is just like a hairstylist from back, like that's what she did for the longest time. My dad was like an entrepreneur, I should say. He kind of did a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But he just kind of traveled around. My dad made music lightly as a kid. Like he's the reason why I knew it was a job. And he got deep into like sync as a kid. Like he had some like theme shows and he had a couple like movie placements that he would get like BMI checks like every quarter.
Shit. What did he play?
What did he play as far as?
Instruments.
Didn't play anything. Didn't play a thing. But he like had Sony's Acid Pro, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
It's the OG DAW.
That was like Windows 5.
Yeah, my dad had like, I remember as a kid I used to mess around with it. It was like Sony's Acid Pro 1, which is funny, which is like the most janky shit in the world.
Just like a grid and you just start pressing squares.
Basically, yeah, it had like these beat CDs that had all these loops. So it was like Splice before Splice.
The old CD-ROMs.
Yeah, no, you'd have to put them in. So he would like just like loop like piece that stuff together and make these like little sync tracks and like place them basically. They were all totally, it's not like it is now, like where if you use a loop, you might have to give somebody like publishing.
Yeah.
It was all like very royalty free. So he would just do that.
And have you ever used the software?
As a kid, that's the first thing I ever used. I used to make like really, really terrible techno albums when I was like 11 and put it up on iTunes.
When's the last time you used it?
Sony's Acid Pro, I was probably like 12 or 13.
We got to get somebody to make a plug-in version to bring into Pro Tools for you.
Man, I'm good. Honestly, I'm cool with just Pro Tools.
You're good with just Pro Tools?
Yeah, honestly.
And you switched to just Pro Tools for good now, right?
For the most part, yeah. I'm like reintegrating Ableton back a little bit.
Interesting.
My whole workflow was great creatively. I started running into a little bit of a headache when it came time to deliver stuff a little bit because every mixer I work with was basically like, can you make these stems sound exactly like Ableton? And my answer was usually like, do my best because it's like, there's a lot of like chains and a lot of stuff that has to get printed onto it. And once you rebalance it, it might not sound the same, you know?
Is there actually any like different, like on a camera, it would be color science? Like, is there actually a different sound?
I've really delved into that like a lot. There is no, like the whole thing people say is like the sound engines are different, which is just not the case.
Yeah.
The thing that does sound different is each DAW sums audio differently. Ableton has like a really like sharp digital like cutoff as far as like headroom goes. The way Pro Tools sums audio is a little bit more musical. That's what people tend to say. Yeah. FL Studio's like saturates like every channel so you get all the punch and separation you want. That's why everything sounds different. It's just the way that it kind of treats each channel and the way it sums per, you know, bus.
That's so interesting.
So with Ableton, it's great, but I was running into the issue that like we have to kind of recreate this a little bit by the time it gets to mixing stage.
So I wonder if there's a way you could get a plugin that replicates the busing like the color of the bus from different DAWs?
So the way I think you could actually, funny enough, but what I've been doing lately is using SoundFlow, if you know what that is.
Mm-mm.
It's like an automated scripting like app. You can get these like little like it's a Stream Deck is what it's called. You
Yeah.
can like assign different processes to buses.
Absolutely.
So what I've been doing lately, I use Pro Tools as like my tape deck and mixing console essentially. And then I'll do like certain creative things that I want to do in Ableton. There's certain things that Ableton just does like better than anybody in my opinion. And I have basically a button that's like takes my selection of tracks, whatever I want, click it, and it transfers it directly into Pro Tools, which is nice. Yeah, it's nice. And then vice versa, I can send anything from Pro Tools into Ableton.
I got to learn how to do that.
It's fun.
Insane.
It's easy. So for me, it as long as I end up in Pro Tools, the mixing part gets a lot easier, and like the finishing part gets easier.
That's so smart. And
Yeah.
speaking of tape deck, your virtual tape deck, I saw you finally bit the bullet.
Yeah, I got like the 4-channel one of the one you have over there.
So the same one as Danny.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And I think Mickey has the same one.
Does Mickey have the same one?
Yeah.
Sick. It's great.
It's so good.
It's really, really cool. There's certain things I've been working on lately that just like needs real tape. And one thing I was talking to Danny about, which is kind of like not talked about, is tape plugins don't sound like tape.
No.
Which is super funny to me.
They sound like what a novice would expect tape to sound like.
So I ran into this issue a long time ago because I come from like an EDM background, like originally, like insanely like digital in the box, like not trying to get warmth or color or anything else like that. Dude, like Massive was my shit. Like
I was a big Massive guy.
100%. I loved really loud, brash, like bass music.
Too many oscillators.
Sure. Speaking of your boy, huge Flostradamus fan back in the day. Like I loved anything like bass heavy, top heavy.
I'm right there with you. I went to so many of his tours.
Sure. The problem I ran into after the fact is as far as like becoming an instrumentalist and getting into more live recordings is I'm like, okay, I don't even know taste-wise what a good piano sounds like because I'm so used to Keyscape and I'm like, I don't know what a real analog synth should sound like because I've been using Massive and like Flutter on a fake tape machine. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not
like the isotope vinyl plugin.
Yeah. Like, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't sound like Tame Impala. Like, it's just like, it doesn't sound like the things that I want it to sound like.
Well, the thing people forget with tape is it's not just color. You're getting compression. You're getting saturation. You're getting, also depends on what your tape is like. Sure. This is all tape for.
You have a ton, yeah.
I'll give you a couple on your way out.
Oh, I appreciate you.
I got a bunch of them from a guy, but like some of my tape, I'll go and I'll feed it out and I'll crunch it in between and let it go through. So I have full tapes that I'll just use for crunchy drums, like in parallel off of my TX mixer.
No, that's awesome. That's super sick. It's a different tone that I think is really fucking hard to get if you don't do it. Yeah.
I think though people also, they don't realize that there's a difference in your tape and the difference in your tape machine will make a lot of difference. Like if you're running a Studer and you're running 1-inch tape at 30 IPS, you're not going to get that same sort of grain.
Sure.
That same sort of color. But then you're running something like this, which is probably, I think, 15 IPS.
Yep.
And running 1/4-inch tape that's all fucked up from the 70s. That's how you're going to get that weird inconsistencies.
It's probably what you're going to want if you have a tape machine in the first place.
Yeah.
I recently kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole as far as like being obsessed with like Sean Everett and Ethan Greska and like Tony Berg and like Blake Mills and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just being really, really obsessed with like how do these dudes get these sounds. And one of them, I was talking to Danny about it, it's just hard to accept. Is like you need tape for like a lot of this stuff just to get it to sound like that.
It's different.
It is different. And it's stupid how much easier it was to get the sound if I just got a tape machine. Like I borrowed Danny's for a while and it was like the first day I was like, okay, this is what it's been this whole time as far as trying to do that.
Yeah, that's like what you're like chasing from the 100%. Beginning.
There's like the Phoebe Bridgers mania that's still happening a bit right now. So I'll still have people come in and be like, I want that.
Yeah.
And without that thing.
From the same people who brought back your balls and made your bush bearable brings you the Beard Hedger. There's one thing about travel that I hate more than anything in the world, and that is bringing 20 different little clip guards just to get the right shave. Not anymore. Manscaped has your back. The Beard Hedger has 20 built-in clipping lengths, so you do not have to worry about losing them anymore. Not only that, but this thing is waterproof. It's cordless, and it has a long-lasting battery, so you don't have to worry about this thing shutting off halfway through and looking like a dork for the rest of your day. Fellas, do me a favor. Stop going to your dates with clean, smooth balls and a gross-looking face. You need them to match. If you want to support me in this podcast, the best thing that you can do is support the sponsors. They help me keep going and make this something that I can continue to do. So do me a favor, head to manscaped.com, use the code EXPERIMENT and get 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code EXPERIMENT at manscaped.com. Go get your beard hedger with 20 different clip lengths.
It's like impossible.
Yeah, you're getting like this overlaid version that's super opaque. You don't
Sure.
get that full thickness on it.
Also, the thing that's underrated about it is you get like so much of the harshness that can come with a lot of brighter mics, because I have nothing but bright mics and like a couple like dark ribbons, and that's it.
You get that stereo AEA, which is
got-
still, even for a ribbon, kind of bright.
Yeah, it's bright for a ribbon. I have M160s now. That's what I kind of use primarily.
Smart.
Which is great. That's like my overhead. I do like, was it Glenn Johns? Is that what it's called?
Glenn Johns is one over and then
yeah,
shoulder.
Exactly. I'll do that, which is great. That through tape sounds awesome.
Man,
So,
I'm so happy you got your drum set up.
We're out here. Yeah.
Man, that's
cool.
unreal.
But aside from that, I have like a Telefunken 251. I have two 251s, and then I have like Cam 184s, and they're just really bright mics, which is great for bright pop, which is what I primarily do. So it's great.
But like, if you put that 251 in your vocal booth and kept the door open, that'll give you a little bit more of that deep sound if you're playing drums on the outside.
I'll literally just like swing it out, honestly, which is
just put it out. Well, you also have the other one on as your like talkback mic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a box. That's like my utility mic too, because I hate running into the booth for acoustics primarily.
Yeah,
or like whistle takes or like backgrounds. So I'll just pull it down, play, makes it easier.
Ever since I came to your house and did that, I put a little pencil condenser right on top of there.
Sick.
And just now, every time I need to do something, I just arm it, clap, and I got my clap.
Yep. It's really good. I think everybody needs like one decent utility mic, just like in front of them.
Stereo pair would be the dream too. Just have two in front of you.
I have a homie. He has 4, which I think is so funny.
That's baller.
Like 2 up here and 2 down here, and he just like puts them wherever he needs. He has a small room.
Is he like doing Atmos?
No, he's just like, he'll have like 2 for his guitar. He'll have his drum overheads there because it's all like right next to him and stuff like that. He'll get like room mics and his like close up. He'll like body, and then 12th fret. He'll get stereo guitar and then overheads for the guitars.
With the stereo.
He just goes a little nuts with it. Yeah.
My favorite drum sound is a stereo room mono overhead.
Really?
I love it.
Like no kick, no snare?
No, definitely kick and snares also, but you get that thickness of that mono overhead, especially if it's like a 4038 or some darker Coles. And then you get the really bright, like if you did two 251s in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, even though they're not matched pairs, I'm sure like the Telefunken and the...
they'll still sound great.
Yeah, 100%.
This mic that I got for the podcast, it's called, I think, a DS25. And it's based off of the Electro Voice RE16.
Cool.
And I thought it was super interesting. They made these mics. It was technically, I think, the RE11 and RE12 or RE10.
Sure.
And when they were making those, they were like the mic of the 60s. It was like the 57. It was everything. And they started making the RE16 and RE18, which just meant that they were so precisely matched that no matter which ones you bought, if it was a 16 or an 18, they were automatically matched.
Huh. That's pretty sick.
I don't know why they don't do that anymore. It's so smart. If you're making the batch anyways, and some mics are going to be perfect, might as well.
Smart.
But
I feel that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So we give a little background on how you got into the music world. Obviously, you were saying your dad kind of was the person to show you that it could be a job. But what was the impetus to really diving in to the extent that you're at now?
So that was kind of an accident, if I'm being honest. I feel like everybody comes to LA and is like, I was born to do this and nothing else. I'm going to do this shit till I die. I didn't actually want to do this for a living. A lot of my family tried to do it and didn't really succeed like they wanted to. So they kind of like, they don't have the most positive disposition about it, which I'm like, that looks not fun. I don't really want to do that. I want it to be like a technician, like an electronics technician, like something with like a really stable job with like recession proof and MIDI and sound. Like I wanted like the stability, to be honest. The only reason why I got into music, I did it for fun as a kid. I came back to the States with my dad when I was like 16 or so. And pretty close to him getting here, he got really sick really fast. Like I kind of remember like within a 3-day period, I was kind of chilling and then was homeless, like really, really quick. He had heart failure. And he kind of freaked out when that happened a little bit. So we lost our place to stay. We tried to move from LA. We were in LA for a while. and tried to move to Georgia, and this like shipping company tried to steal all of our shit and all this different stuff. Just lost everything we owned within like a day, like overnight, lost everything.
Yeah.
And I was recently like freshly in LA via Brazil from moving from Europe. I had this passport that like nobody would really believe or accept for some reason. It was like an Austrian European passport. I did not have my American passport. I didn't have an address, and I didn't have a high school diploma. I dropped out of high school like immediately. I was only in high school for like three months or so. So I had like
And that was your freshman year.
that was like I skipped ahead basically.
Okay.
Like because I had this really inconsistent like schooling growing up a little bit because I jumped around a lot of different spots. It was a little dramatic. I had like very inconsistent like school records, so I had to like do like a retest of like a what is it like an exam to show me where I was going to go.
Yeah.
So I just like had to leave school, and then couldn't get a job at Taco Bell because I looked so illegal on paper. It looked, and especially as like a brown kid, they're like, yeah, right, yeah, yeah, that's a nice European passport you have, and also my English wasn't great, so it was like double fucked.
I guess I didn't even think about that. Your first language was not English.
First language was German. Relearned English, forgot English, and then main language was German. Now my German is so fucking rusty.
Do they speak German in Austria?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do they also?
It's like Hill German. It's like very very regional dialect German. Yeah.
I guess like the U.S., you're gonna have really distinct dialects.
Sure, 100%. It's the
Still
equivalent
English.
with me coming over here as if you were to see like a German dude with like a thick Southern drawl, basically.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So people are just like, the fuck is this?
Interesting.
Which is funny.
Do you still speak German?
I do. It's so rusty. Like I understand it perfectly speaking it because I never speak it.
What does Ich mag Käse mean?
What was it?
Ich mag Käse?
Käse?
Käse, maybe?
Käse is I like cheese.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I know from my friend in middle school.
That's a good one.
All right, sorry, keep going.
It's all good. But yeah, my dad got sick, and so like we were kind of trying to figure it out. I tried to get a job anywhere, like Taco Bell, Papa John's, anything. Like I had an affinity for audio equipment and like musical shit. Guitar Center couldn't like so many jobs, like dozens and dozens of applications, couldn't get a thing because nobody wants to give you a job. The one job that nobody asked me, where's your address in your high school as musicians? So my godfather was this dude who was the son of a big producer, and he would bring me around studios basically. And I knew this kid who went to LARS, LA Recording School.
Yeah.
Who would like pay me some cash to do his homework. So I told everybody that I graduated from LARS basically when I was like 16. I told him I was like a genius like recording kid. And I knew this shit in theory, but not in practice. I used Pro Tools like a little bit, and that's it. For this kid's like homework and shit. And like so my dad had like a project studio that was a computer with nothing on it. And so I just started going to like these like really like sketchy ass studios in the Valley, and they would let me like crash and like feed me, and I would just record these pretty unsavory characters at all hours of the night. That's how I learned how to run sessions. Then yeah.
Holy shit.
That's the start of it at least. And I started making beats for fun as like got really into dubstep, like really, really into dubstep.
Yeah.
And bass music and all that different stuff. This one Skrillex was like just starting to be like the king of the
Oh
world.
yeah. When it was still Dr. P,
All that dude.
Skrillex,
All that
Zed's
stuff.
Dead.
Dude, Cookie Monster and all
Oh, wow.
Sub Focus and all those dudes. Like I listen to
man.
all that stuff. Like funny enough, my one homie who I just did his podcast last week, he introed me to Joker. I don't know if you remember him.
Joker.
He was one of like the OGs.
Yes.
Like the OGs who was still like he was on Skrillex's last.
He used to do stuff with Flux Pavilion.
All that shit. Yeah. So I was like, that was like one of my childhood heroes, like being like, holy shit, dude. And so shout out to Austin Seltzer and his podcast too.
I just congratulated him today for
Sick.
for the release.
Hell yeah.
So sick for him.
I'm really stoked about it.
Yeah. I hear he's a
deserves
good
it.
dude.
He's the best dude. Love him to death.
I love it.
Love him to death.
I'm rooting for him. Go tune into his podcast. Watch, support.
Grounds for success.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I started making bass music and started making beats, and then this is my dad's best friend who's like my godfather, and he sent my music to the kid of Berry Gordy, who was the guy who started Motown, who was a dude named
Childhood
Kerry.
hero.
Yeah, so it's a dude named Kerry, and I got an invite to go up to Kerry's house, and he was doing a new project with his dad, basically. That at the time was on
With Berry Gordy?
Mm-hmm. That was on Epic Records, so I'd never played my music in a professional setting ever before, and there was all these fucking legends in this room, and I was a literal homeless kid, and I looked like it too. I had this CD full of janky-ass dubstep pop beats.
Fuck yeah.
And gave the most terrifying speech I'd ever heard in my life about like being like, we're really doing shit here. Like, you know, be like an artist on your own time. We're here to make money. And I was like, oh, fuck. So like a lot. And I dropped my fucking CD in the trash when I got there. This nice house in Bel Air. He asked if anybody had some music to play. My godfather, who took me, volunteered me, and was like, "He's got music." They're like, "Play your shit," and I had to go into the fucking trash can and get my CD.
Wow.
Which is funny. And then the first song I played is the first song they ever paid me money for. And I was like, okay, you can actually do this.
Holy shit.
At a time where I couldn't get a job at Taco Bell, and I was like recording like random ass people.
And
Yeah.
how do you go from this moment where you're kind of learning the first lesson
Mhm.
that everybody's going to learn? It's normally not in a room with Barry Gordy for the first time.
Sure.
But that lesson of there's a time and a place for everything.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's huge here. That is
Sure.
half of what it takes to be a producer, is to understand your place and when it's time to be there and when it's time to be
Sure.
supportive.
One thing that Barry said one time that kind of really stuck with me is like the hardest thing for people to do in LA specifically is to show up. And I didn't know what that meant until like years later when we'd have these like awesome opportunities and people just wouldn't fucking come.
Yeah.
Like they would come and they would like half-ass it. They wouldn't be prepared and shit like that. So I learned kind of the hard way what he meant by that. And it's something I always remembered. I learned the hard way too through this process because I would go up to Carrie's house 3 times a week for like a couple years without like really getting paid anything because I was just learning and like working with people.
Yeah.
And I kind of learned the hard way that it's like the people who are successful, yes, you have to be talented. That's like a given. It's not like
There's a threshold you got to hit before you're even welcome.
that's not like the ticket to success. That's the
Yeah.
key to open the door to get into the room to start trying to be successful. The people who are genuinely successful are the people who can maintain and develop relationships, and the people who work very smart as well as hard. You can subsequently stop working as hard if you work smart. But at first there is no sub for both of those things. And I learned that the hard way. You're good.
That's so interesting, and it's really, I think, one of those things that we can preach
Sure.
and preach, but it just takes experience
100%.
to kind of get knocked into your head. I mean, I came out here and went to Icon originally, Icon Collective,
Yeah, no, yeah.
and I was in a class with like 40 some odd kids, and kids that were and are so much more talented than me and many of my friends. And the only thing that I saw that separated them from the people who continued to make this a career in one fashion or another was the kids who showed up. First of all, the kids who didn't just show up an hour late. The kids who were there 15 minutes early, not
Sure.
because they had to, because they were excited to get better,
Sure.
to learn, to have new experiences. And the people who kept the relationships.
Yeah.
And this is something that I'm not saying as somebody who's doing it successfully all the time. I'm working on this every fucking day, as I'm sure you are and everybody
Has to, yeah.
But like, if you got a room of 5 people and one of those people not only showed up on time or if not early, but they're attentive and excited, and part of being there is being a good energy.
Sure.
If you're pissed off and that's all you're giving everybody else all day.
See, at that point, it doesn't even matter how good you are. Like, honestly, like people, at a certain point, people won't, I think at least, people won't really put up with your shit.
Absolutely.
Unless you're so fucking good that you are the only person in the world who can do what you are providing, which is slim and like, it just doesn't happen very often. It's very rare. Unless you're that guy, like you just have to make friends. We all know a couple of those dudes who are like, how do you even have a career in music? But they're the most personable people in the world, and they know how to like move very well. We all know those guys. We all know who they are. We don't have to say names, but those guys arguably make more money than the most talented guys that we do know.
Yeah.
You know?
There's definitely, you got to kind of pick which lane you want to go. And one of the lanes may bring money, but it's not going to bring friendships. It's not going to bring relationships. It's not going to bring genuine human connection.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, if you do this right, you can be a great person and still make a fucking damn good living.
Sure. I was talking to Danny about this. I think at least in the production world, I think it's different with writers and artists and everything, but purely production, I think there are 3 different types of people. There's the dude who is just wicked at his fucking machine and can like program anything and play anything and do everything, but he can't look you in the eye. The dude who can't do shit, but he's also just like the most talkative, personable dude. And then the third guy who's an even amount of both.
Yeah.
Usually the third dude ends up making a fuck ton of money and being pretty damn successful for a long time.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And there's part of this industry too is just like learning how to not spread yourself too thin.
Sure.
And get good enough at the things you need to know, but also be able to fill gaps in a room that maybe other people can't fill.
Sure.
Anybody who asks me what they can do to start getting in rooms as a producer, who I know is a great piano player, I say, go get in that room as a piano player.
Yeah.
If that's the skill that you can sit on and feel the most comfortable with on the spot, anything to get you in those rooms where you can be helpful
Sure.
is going to eventually somebody's going to say, fuck, I don't know what to do on this. And you're going to go sit at the desk. And then they're going to see that you're a good producer too. But like, if you're not in the room in the first place because you're not getting the exact gig you want right away,
Sure.
then you're never going to find yourself at the point where you can start making decisions of which gig you want to take.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
So how do you go from this room with Barry Gordy and his kid to being the main producer on tracks with people that I'm sure you grew up listening to?
Sure. I mean, that's a very long journey.
That's
still.
true.
But I worked with Carrie and Barry and all those dudes for like years, and they really went to bat for me. I think the one thing that's very underrated is having a champion and a mentor.
Yeah.
I think mentorship is more important than school or anything else. To just have someone that you appreciate and respect what they do and how they did it, give you guidance. I think that's so important. And just somebody to look out for you. They helped me get my first major label single on Capitol Motown, which is what helped me get my first pub deal, which helped me get like a bunch of shit, honestly. So it's just like trying to take advantage of every opportunity. I had this like moment like after all this, funny enough, where I had to kind of start from scratch a little bit. Like I kind of lost everything. Like I got an apartment, got a car, did the whole nine after being like homeless for many years.
Yeah.
And lost it all again, and I had to live in my studio for like another year. But funny enough, that year of me living in that studio is when everything kind of started for me. It's where I met my manager and shit like that. It's where I learned a couple hard lessons about like trusting people too easily in certain situations. And I met my manager there because I was really determined to get a manager and do everything I can. I'm very lucky to have a great one right now. Shout out Spencer. And he's been my guy ever since then. And like, you know, just like making sure that you bet on yourself in the right way. And it was at a time when I met a lot of people that I'm still very good friends with today. Drew DeCaro, who's on here.
Man, I love Drew.
I've known since I was like 19, but I met him around the time I was like dealing with this stuff. And just like I would go to Drew's house at like 2 and 3 in the morning, just work on anything. And we do have this little support group of like producers. And
man, he seemed to have done that for a lot of people who have a really good head on their shoulders.
100%. He's just a very good dude.
Yeah.
Like very good dude.
He's somebody I'm not close enough with him that I can really say he's a mentor in the way that eventually I would like to.
Sure.
But he's definitely one of those people like a Danny for me, or Kurt, or even a you, who like people who age is not the reason. It's where they're at and what they've learned.
Sure.
And you're also one of those people, and so is Danny, and so is Kurt, where there's no like, if I ask you a question, there's never that moment of like, ooh, should I tell him my secret? It just always feels like willingness to help. And I feel like that's probably what you got from your mentor as well. It was like understanding that any guidance given is not guidance lost for yourself.
100%. The idea of there being secrets in this industry, like, oh, don't give up the sauce because then it's not like mine or whatever.
Yeah.
If I give you the same chains, the same racks that I have in Ableton, we are going to make different music.
Yes.
Like even if I give you the exact like drag and drop shit, it just will not sound the same because we're different people. There's always this fear that you're going to lose your sense of identity, which I think is silly in my opinion. And it's just a little bit egotistical in my opinion as well.
Man,
I think the idea is like the more you spread and the more you help share, the more it comes back at you. A lot of my like sound library to this day is from me like giving a lot of my like secrets away to people and then being like, what can I give you? And I'm like, give me your samples.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people, like that's how I like got my stuff. I've also like lost my main rig like 3 or 4 times. So I've built my stuff up over and over again. And
via
that's
the community
and
around
that's
you.
via the grace of the people around me, you know? And like I got very lucky to have certain people around me that are just like-minded in that way.
Man, it's such a big part of this industry. And it's part of the reason I love comedy. And I stress this a lot on this podcast. I'm sorry if you've heard this 900 times. But the thing I love about the comedy industry is everybody goes on everybody's podcast and it's never competition.
Sure.
Everybody who's doing really well or who's not has the ability to help each other out.
100%.
And that's something I'm trying to stress more in the music world.
Yeah.
And I think part of the place that I'm going to be able to find where I can help the most, hopefully by just having the platform, but like even just talking about your buddy whose podcast is on, like, go fucking Go share your friends. Go share the people that you want to see win. And if you don't want to see them win, keep your mouth shut. There's no need to put people down. And like all of that kind of turns into what you were talking about earlier is like there's a person in the room who's good at what they do, but they also have a history of being a good person.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's all part of it. It's like if everybody's your enemy, then eventually you're going to end up in rooms where people don't want to see you win.
Oh, very quickly. I mean, even if you're a good dude, that can happen a lot of times because people don't necessarily like competition all the time.
Absolutely.
Or to feel that sense of competition. So why make it hard on yourself?
I completely agree. And I think like, I don't know, if path of least friction. And if you can build that, then your life will be easier. And that's for everything.
To answer your question a little more succinctly earlier about like how to go from like starting there to getting and stuff, the short answer is just like mentors and people that really like mess with you in that way. One of my first real like legit mentors was a dude named John Levine, and like a lot of my big cuts I got from working with him and him kind of like taking me under his wing and me going to his house like every day.
I like his last name.
Yeah. Good dude.
And were you good at asking questions? Is that something you've always been good at?
I had to learn that, and I think like asking a straight up question is a valuable skill, but also learning how to absorb information is probably more important because there's certain questions I asked, I just didn't like the answers to.
Yeah.
I had one mentor for a little while, who's a dude named Sammy. He went by Brills back in the day.
I know Brills.
Yeah, dude, Sammy was the man. And like I would go to his studio a few times, and like we ended up being like studio neighbors for a while, and he like played me his stuff, and I was like playing him mine. I'm like, how do I get my shit to sound like yours? And he was like, this was humbling. He's like, honestly, dude, I think I just have better taste than you. Like I just pick better sounds. Like we're not doing anything that different. I'm just doing it in a more tasteful way than you are. And it just kind of fucked me up. I was like, there has to be like a setting, or like a plugin I'll have.
Is it Goldfoss?
Didn't even have it at the time. It was a lot of OTT.
Oh yeah.
But like that was like a hard thing for me to swallow, and like especially like looking back, like I'm sure I don't know about you, dude. I have this curse at the moment that it's the new year, 2022 to 23. Whatever I did last year, I can't listen to again.
Yeah.
Personally, I have that issue a little bit where I'm like, I need to grow my taste, my palate, everything per year, as long as I'm making little steps.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the older I get and the more I question certain things, which I think you just constantly have to in order to improve a little bit. It's like looking in the mirror when you're working out.
100%.
A little bit. Like you just have to want to continue to get better.
It's like a self-awareness too.
100%. And it's the idea where if you like, I'm the fucking shit and my shit sounds better than everybody else's, the best people in the world don't think like that is the problem. And those guys are always like, how do I push the envelope? How do I sound better? How do I make my shit sound more competitive? Man, at all times.
And what I've realized from having so many people on this podcast is the one thing that everybody who's successful that's been on has in common is they're not done learning.
No, never. Like you have to, like what you were kind of saying before, like genuinely have a hunger to learn and get better and improve constantly.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Man,
it can be.
Build a life where it is.
Sure.
That's the thing is like so much of what you've been talking about is the difference in getting there or not is the difference in taking maybe one extra second and thinking.
Sure.
Or being a little bit more self-aware or looking at your day yesterday and trying to make today just a little bit more impactful or learn a little bit more. And all of these steps that you're talking about, I'm sure there were so many days throughout that where you felt like you were decreasing or where you weren't going where you wanted.
All the time.
I mean, it's retrospect that, is the killer of all bullshit.
100%. I think the whole idea of this job, at least with production, because again, it's very different as a writer. It's very different as an artist, in my opinion. I think but any creative, I think, can take this part of it, which I used to be obsessed with, like watching like productivity, like videos, podcasts, audiobooks, anything else like that. And there was this one music one I listened to that kind of changed my life forever. And the idea of inspiration, the idea of being inspired is overrated in my opinion. The idea that I can't work unless I'm inspired, that's not your job. Like the part of working is fun. That is the fun part. Your job is to be inspired. And I remember listening to this dude being like, my job isn't to sit at the computer and make a track or finish something. My job is to be inspired from 9 to 5. And then I have time with my family and everything else like that. So whatever I need to do to be inspired, whether it's take a day off, go for a run, that's my job. My job is to get inspired. And if you look at it that way, and instead of like, my job is to sit here and comp this vocal, my job is to sit here and make these drums. Because then it's like you're thinking about this thing that was your dream as your job. And that sucks. And that's the worst feeling in the fucking world, is to get into a beautiful room like this and feel like I don't want to do shit right now because it's my job. That's a shame, in my opinion.
That is so fucking well said. And definitely a place that I've been dealing with over the past year, especially of having something that I obviously started. There was hundreds of episodes, or over 100 episodes, where I wasn't making a dime off this podcast.
Sure.
And it was so fun. And the second you start making a little money, then it starts turning into this job thing. And it's
100%.
just a world that I've been fighting, because I know every time I'm sitting here and I'm in the middle of this,
Sure.
I'm in like this bliss. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's just, sometimes you just have to remind yourself that too.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, what you're talking about, obviously you can say it a million times and you mean it, but I can vouch for, that's one of the things that was kind of so romantic about the way you go about this industry, is you're not looking for inspiration sitting at your desk. That's where you're using your inspiration almost.
100%.
You're looking for it in the world. You're going to see people. You're going and taking days off. You're going to be with loved ones. Like that type of stuff. Sustainability.
It's so different from person to person, because I like to think of myself as a personable person, but I'm severely introverted. Like pandemic was going on, I felt no different whatsoever. And just being a shut-in, like, it's what I'm used to. So the way I even will do it is just like, I have like a timer on my desk, like it's not connected to my phone. The one thing I do not like doing is comping vocals.
I feel that.
The one thing it's just like, I don't enjoy it, because I'm also a perfectionist when it comes to vocals, because I think if you have a great track and a shitty vocal, you failed a little bit. You hear so many amazingly beautiful vocals on the radio with tracks that you feel like anybody could have done. But the vocal is like, and that's the whole point. You're a producer, you're not a beat maker. If we want to make dope beats, go do beat battles.
And it conveys the story then too.
100%. Like, you can have very minimal production, less production, I guess you should say, than you might feel like you need if you feel like the vocal is there. Yeah. So that's probably the part I'll spend the most amount of time on when I work. It's fucking tedious, because if we have 40 takes, I'm listening to 40 takes and I'm making 6 or 7 different comps really, and then comping from that. So it just takes forever. And it's just a process that I try to get through more so than anything, but that's not a great way to look at it either. So I have reward systems for myself. For every hour that I work on this comp, I get to play my Nintendo Switch for 15 minutes. And so I'm focusing so that the hour goes by so that I can play my game, so I can get to the next part in this new Zelda game that came out.
It's so smart though. It's like, hack the system. And there's nobody that knows the system better than you. You know? Right. It's if you understand yourself well enough, you understand what gets you to move, even when you don't want to. And if you can build those systems into your life in a way, and like the fact that you're saying you're not even using your phone for it, for that timer, that's probably also, I'm sure that was not a mistake.
No, because Instagram and your phone and somebody needs you and stuff like that. And you only have so many hours in a day to get stuff done. So if you're doing shit like setting yourself up to be distractive, you're going to have a harder time, in my opinion. Because that's just like, most of us have ADHD. You know, most of us 100%. Have attention issues. Otherwise, we wouldn't be banging on stuff trying to figure out what sounds nice. Yeah, you know,
and that's also everything you're saying kind of funnels into the same place. And like what you were saying, how if you use the precious time of your day that you need to work to check Instagram and do all these things, then it's going to start extending into the part of your day that you're supposed to be gathering life and gathering information and becoming refreshed and inspired and all these things. And it's just like, you got to give yourself restraints. You got to be just as true to your word as you'd like somebody else to be.
Sure. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. You got to make yourself proud within the whole thing.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
You proud
of myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, 100%. I'd like a little better of a work-life balance, but outside of that, yeah.
But the fact that you're able to say that out loud means that you're going to head that direction a lot quicker than if you weren't able to say it.
I've been saying it for a long time.
Yeah, but I bet you've gotten better at it, even if it was...
Sure, totally.
Even if it's something that's kind of not, that you're not able to speak out loud. I'm 100%. Sure it's gotten, or at least more aware.
Having a girlfriend helps.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean... The thing that I see with a lot of people who are single for a long time, and obviously there's a lot of benefits to that as well for some people, but like you become selfish with yourself
Sure.
When you're with somebody else and they also rely on you and your time, you have to split it up a little more.
Sure.
Or else there's issues. And it's like, treat yourself the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Midi Jones, this was fucking amazing.
Thanks for having me,
This was
buddy.
so great. I'm so happy you came on and I sent you my address in time this time. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're totally good, buddy. Appreciate you.
Is there anything you want people to know? Is there anything you're working on that you want people to know or hear? Where can they find you?
I am on Instagram at Midi Jones. One word, looks like the word Midi Jones. I'm working on this girl right now on Atlantic named Alyssa Cara that I'm really stoked about. I'm doing most of her first project, which I'm very excited about. And she's got a generational voice, which I'm really excited about.
Oh.
Got a lot of stuff cooking right now. I'm actually stoked about.
Man, I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm.
Go look up this man's dick. Oh my God.
You can do that too.
They're not going to hear that.
OnlyFans / Midi Jones.
Go look up this man's discography. And I promise there's not only artists that you know, there's songs that you've been listening to.
I genuinely hope you keep that in.
I'm keeping it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm just going to clip that one part. It's just me saying that and then your arm going up.
Oh, man, I hope you don't. But
that's
if you do,
how
that's all good.
End a fucking podcast.
Thanks
Go
for
look
having me,
up
buddy.
his music. Go keep following this man. Everything he said today is so not only useful, but it comes from a place of somebody who's trial and erred and A/B tested everything you can imagine to get to where he is. I appreciate you. I love you,
too, buddy. Likewise,
and
bud.
thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And to everybody out there,
I'm Midi Jones, and this is an experiment.
yeah, it is. Love you guys.
The experience is the experiment.